Thank you. Hi. I'm incredibly happy to be here to talk to you today about API-based CMSs. For us, we've seen great improvement to our stores, quality of life, really, as developers, just kind of all around benefits, really not a lot of downside. To start off with, I'm Eric Saupe. Like you said, I work for Deseret Book. We are a book publisher that sells mainly Christian and Latter-day Saint products. We were founded in 1866, and we're still alive today. Obviously, things have changed a little bit, but we sell over 20,000 saleable variants on our site. We also sell a lot of those products in our 45 physical retail locations and authorized resellers across the United States. And we also have an e-reader app that has all of our digital products, because we sell digital products as well, like ebooks and audiobooks. And we just launched a subscription service for that that gives you access to unlimited audiobooks and over 1,000 ebooks. So that's been really good, and all of that actually gets powered through our Solidus-based site. So this is our Solidus site, deseretbook.com. It's gone through a lot of transitions, but we sell everything from like books and art and home. You can kind of see at the top there's movies and music and food, and I mean, we sell everything. We sell tons and tons and tons of stuff. So in addition to those digital products, we sell physical products that are fulfilled through our warehouse, which we own and operate in Salt Lake City. And we communicate with that Oracle-based warehouse from Solidus as well. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of all the different things that our Solidus store kind of tries to do and attempts to be. But today we're going to talk about these API-based CMSs, and so let's talk about that. There's always the journey, right? Like how did we get to where we are? So starting off, Deseret Book was once upon a time a custom Rails app. There was no like e-commerce gem. It was all written in-house. It was all very custom, and that was pretty good. I mean, it got us, along, and that was really great. So as far as marketing tools go, it was a little bit limited. So first, the homepage was really the only place that they could advertise well. Now, the homepage is a great place to sell products, but if they wanted to update it, it required a lot of coordination. There was no easy way to update it. So when the marketing team would come with a new product or a new sale or something, they would have to coordinate with the developers, right? They would have to come to us with new images, new copy, and sort of the date when it was scheduled to be deployed. So we would have to put that into our sprints, and we would have to coordinate when that deploy was going to happen. So it had to go up to QA and testing and make sure that everybody was happy with what it was. And since oftentimes it was selling a product or like a sale, those deploys had to happen at midnight. So we would always have to have a developer ready at midnight the day of to push the button and deploy the whole thing. And that whole situation was that just wasn't good, and like for anybody involved. The marketers weren't very happy with it because they had to time it with us. The developers weren't happy with it because we'd rather be working on features and bug fixes and not just updating the homepage. And I'm sure a lot of you probably have fairly similar experiences to that, at least in some kind of aspect, right? And so going back to kind of the marketing tools that we had back then, so we had the homepage, right? And then we also had what are called category pages. Today we would think about them as taxon pages, right? You'd create this category, you'd put a bunch of products in it, and then you'd link to that in your email, and they'd send out the email, and that would be like your sale category, right? Which I don't think is actually a bad idea. Even today, I think a taxon for a sale is not a terrible idea. But that's what we had back then. And we also had what was the top 10 list on our homepage. So the top 10 list was kind of the only one that was sort of automated. And I say that because every sort of night it would update the popular products to appear on the top 10. And I put popularity in quotes because popularity was just which products are making us the most money. For example, if we sold one piece of art at $2,000, but we sold 600 bookmarks at $3, That one piece of art would be more popular to the end user. So, I mean, it was something, right? Like, again, it's not great, but there's something that the marketers can work with, right? So, at this time, we noticed that the legacy site just couldn't keep going forward. There was the lists of features requested were getting long, the list of bugs were getting really long, and we just couldn't really maintain that properly. And so that's when we found Spree, and that was going to be great, right? Like, that was such a good idea, an open source e-commerce gem that we could just build off of. So other people are doing the e-commerce part, and we just need to worry about like business type things. So communicating with that warehouse I talked about, sending stuff to our e-reader API. That's what we as developers could focus on while somebody else worried about the e-commerce stuff. And it gave us a totally fresh code base, which is awesome because now we don't have legacy, right? And everybody hates legacy apps, but they work, so how bad can they really be? But we got a totally fresh code base, and that gave us an opportunity to expand our marketing features. If I can hit that. So we were going to expand marketing features, right? We were going to give them more control over the site. We were going to give them more tools. And at this time, once we moved to Spree, that was a transition all on its own. But we expanded the marketing tools to include the homepage, right? We still had that. Homepage came over. That was good. We now had taxon pages. Those are the same as category pages, right? That's, just translated over. We still had the top 10. And this time, we integrated with Adobe Target. So Adobe Target is a service that lets you add content to your site, and it will help you with conversions, and it's an Adobe product to do that kind of thing. So what happens is the developers have to add a DOM element onto the page somewhere, usually like a div with an ID, and then the Adobe Target JavaScript would pull data from their server and just inject it onto your site. And so that's pretty cool. It also gave us A/B testing, and we actually let it control a good portion of the home page. So things like the top 10 list could now be updated and changed and A/B tested, and they could also put like a message at the top that would say, oh, there's going to be downtime, or there's a sale that just happened. And so that was pretty neat. We actually learned through that A/B testing that that popular top 10 was not really performing very well. And if you just curated that list and we just displayed what we thought were good products, those actually performed much better than our algorithm of popularity. But it did come down with a lot of negatives. So first, if Adobe Target was down, basically our homepage was empty, right? It's getting a lot of its content from Adobe Target, so now all of a sudden your homepage is blank. That's not a great experience. Adobe Target is also a fairly targeted thing by ad blockers. So if you came to our site with an ad blocker, the homepage would be empty again, right? It would just block that request, and you'd have no data coming in, and so now you'd have an empty homepage. Now for most of us, or most of our clients, that wasn't a big deal. Most of our clients don't really use ad blockers. But for developers and other kind of tech-savvy clients that we had, that's not good. Like, we can't have the homepage be empty. The other issue that I think a lot of developers had was basically what's happening is JavaScript injection and malformed HTML is possible, right? Like, there wasn't a good like QA system for what the marketers were putting into those DOM elements. They would just load, and they could inject JavaScript if they wanted to. They could inject HTML, and if there was any error with the JavaScript, the page might break entirely. If the HTML was like malformed, it might close elements improperly. Like, that's not very good. We didn't love that. That was pretty dangerous. And it was also a fairly expensive contract that we were paying for them. And so, I mean, the list of marketing tools went up, and that's okay, right? We learned a lot by doing this. We did get A/B testing. That was cool. We did see the benefit of allowing marketers to update content on the site. So with the expensive contract ending, we didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted to sit down and figure out, like, is there a better way? Like, that was pretty good, but could we do it better? So we sat down with the marketing team and we said, okay, if you could have like the perfect tool, what would it do? And they said, first, we want to update the homepage regularly. That's where they sell a lot of things. That's where their sales happen. Update the homepage regularly. Okay, good. They wanted to add content not just to the homepage, but they also wanted to do it on other pages, checkout, taxon pages, you name it. They just wanted to start putting content and ads all over the place. Cool, that's fine. They wanted to do scheduled releases so that nobody had to stay up until midnight every night to make sure that things worked and work late. They wanted to pick a time, and that's when it would happen, and we could all go to bed safely, wake up in the morning, it would all be good. They also wanted to do live previews. One of the problems with Adobe Target was there was really no way to preview it. You just kind of injected it and went back to the page and went, yeah, that was fine. And that wasn't super good because of the injection stuff, and it's finicky. So live previewing was a pretty requested feature. Great, so now we have this list of sort of specs that they want, little list of features. And so what were our options at the time? We could write it ourselves. We're developers. We can, that doesn't sound that hard, right? That's easy. Right, so it would require developer time to do that. Our team is pretty spread thin, so there's not like a lot of time to dedicate to that. It would require ongoing maintenance, obviously, bug fixes, and I'm sure there would have been scope creep. So that just didn't seem feasible for us. We could have written all this on top of Spree. We would have had to do, like admin interfaces and cron jobs and all of that stuff. We could have done that. But we decided to look around, and what we found was API-based CMSs. So an API-based CMS is a content management service that's API-based, which means that it's not in your site, right? It's somewhere else in the cloud. A lot of people refer to it as a content as a service, and that's really what it is. So for us, that was awesome because it was low maintenance. We didn't have to do anything, right? Like they made their product, and now we're just going to use it. There was a GUI for editing, so that's really nice. Like we didn't have to write that either. And once the data was in there, it was returned to us, the developers, as JSON. Perfect. Like that's how we want it. And we could publish it without a deploy because we're just pulling from a service, so we didn't need to deploy the site. We just pull new data, and we're good. We could also do it server-side, which means that we could avoid ad blockers. We wouldn't have to let them worry about any client making a request. The server was going to make the request for the elements, and we would just render it ourselves. And then marketers could be in charge of site content because we could give them a sandbox that we had set up and controlled. So there was no longer that HTML or JavaScript injection that could have broken the site. So that was great. But the real question was which to choose. If you do a really quick Google search on API-based CMSs, you'll find a lot of them. And the question is really which do you choose? And I think most of them kind of do a very similar thing, right? You just put content in it and you pull it back out. So for us, we narrowed it down to Contentful and Prismic. Now, Contentful is definitely the bigger one here. Contentful is the big dog, the big company out of these two. And for a lot of things, they are really good. For like a smaller site, they would be really good. If you're not using kind of their higher plans, they have really good interfaces. It's good to communicate with. Prismic on the higher plans, which we started to use, was less expensive. It offered scheduled deploys and live previewing. Contentful does offer scheduled deploys, but you have to have like a Ruby gem installed in your application, and we didn't really want to maintain that. But Prismic just does it automatically for you. So ultimately, we did choose Prismic. So the rest of the talk is going to be about kind of our journey with Prismic. But these principles can be applied to really any API-based CMS. Okay, so now we picked Prismic, right? We've got this new tool, we're really excited about it, and the contract's ending for Adobe, so let's implement it. At this time, we actually did another rewrite of DeseretBook.com. This is when we came to Solidus. In our zeal to keep Spree like legacy, we customized it so much that we had actually forked Spree, and we were running on a 2.3 fork of Spree. And the developers got together and we said, we can't, it's not even worth upgrading, following the upgrade path. We're not even going to do that. And so that's when we found Solidus, and we were like, okay, we're great, we're just going to move to Solidus. We're going to do totally from scratch rewrite. We started a new project, Solidus, and our new motto was Go Vanilla. And this is still our motto today, and we live by this day in and day out, that if Solidus does it, just do it. And we have tried really hard to remove any sort of custom code that interfered with Solidus, and we've tried really hard to push back on sort of the business as a whole to say this is how Solidus works and this is how you should work, because we don't want to maintain these crazy customizations that are wanted. And that's been really beneficial to us. When we started, we were at 1.2. When we started our fresh project in Solidus, it was 1.2. During development, it took 5 months of development. And in the middle of that, they released 1.3, and we were able to upgrade as we were, before we deployed. Once we deployed, it went to 1.4 within a week, and we upgraded also, like right after that, to 1.4, and a couple of weeks later, we went to 2.0, and we've been aggressively trying to keep up with the Solidus releases. And right now, we're running 2.1 with a pull request open for 2.2. So we are really happy with Solidus. We did have to pull over some features, and we were only going to add valuable features as they were needed. Obviously, the warehouse is one. We got to have that. We got to have the e-reader stuff, and we got to have some custom. We do some custom gift card and sort of store credit stuff that's handled in another service we have. So those needed to come over, but we did see Prismic as valuable, so we were going to add that. Great, so we sat down and we were like, okay, Prismic. So Prismic is a content management service, and you can model your data, right? They don't know what content you want to have managed, so you get to model it. So we sat down with the marketing team and we said, okay, what content do you really want? And we asked them, what do you want to put around the site? Like, what are the elements that you want to see around? And they said things like sliders, hero banners, mini banners, carousels, multi-items, headings, like just a lot of different things that they wanted to put kind of around the site. Great, that's awesome. Now we know what we're working with, and so we went to Prismic and we created what's called a custom type. Now a custom type is what you use to define the data structure. You can describe what can be edited, like what fields can be added, and you get to pick whether it's a repeatable type or a single type. So a repeatable type, I don't know if you can read this very well, but it's best for multiple instances like blog posts, authors, and products. And a single type is best for unique page like the home page or a privacy policy page. So obviously you can see what we would choose for different things. So this is an example of one that I just started to create called the multi-item carousel, right, when we saw in that last one. And if you don't know what a multi-item carousel is, it's just like a list of products that kind of go to the side and you hit the next button and it slides over. That's a multi-item carousel. So we're going to define that right here in Prismic. So you just create the new custom type and you're brought to this page. And this page is really neat because it has a build mode over there on the right, and you can just kind of drag and drop the fields that you want them to use. Or if you're real tricky, you can open the JSON editor up at the top and just type JSON. So I dragged a bunch of stuff over, and you can't see that very well, but you can here, hopefully. So I did a UID, so it's a unique ID, so that I can name it and know what this multi-item carousel was going to be. And then I created a group, and a group is a set of repeatable fields, which obviously for a multi-item carousel makes sense, right? Like each item in the carousel will have these fields. I added an image, a link, and a SKU. So marketers could they could upload a unique image, a unique URL to go to, or we let them just put in a SKU and just pull from the Solidus database. So like, don't even worry about a custom image, don't even worry about a custom URL, just here's a SKU, render that. So it was kind of like two things that, we gave them a couple of choices, which was really neat. So once we had that all modeled, and the marketing team could create one of these as a Prismic document. A Prismic document is like a created, it's a custom type that actually has values in it. And we needed to be able to pull that into our app. So here's the code of our Prismic helper. And it just accesses the Prismic API through the Prismic, there's a Prismic Ruby gem. And I just we added these methods to make our lives a little bit easier as developers. So there's just the Prismic API. It initializes with your Prismic URL and your Prismic access token. And down here is a Prismic ref. Now the ref is really neat because it functions a lot like a git hash. While you're editing things in Prismic, it will save drafts, and it will save, you could even fork somebody's already released thing, and they really use all of these terminologies. So a lot of us go, oh yeah, that sounds right. And so that's what these refs are. Those are just the hashes. And so I have other methods that I didn't post because I don't want this to be like super long. But the preview ref and the experiment ref simply get their references from cookies on the user's browser. Or if there's not one set, we just say, hey, Prismic, what's the current release of the site or wherever I am? And just give me that. So here is the next part, right? And this is funny because Clark was like, no more class eval. And then I'm like, oh, class eval, here we go. So I include my Prismic helper, right? And then I do a before action just on the show to just add a little bit, I'm just going to give myself a new set of data. And so I just do this Prismic API get single, and I want that multi-item carousel. Like, just give me a multi-item carousel. So once I have that element and I pulled it from Prismic, I need to render it somehow. So this is on the show HTML ERB file. And just under taxons, I added a new render, and it renders a partial for the multi-item carousel. What we did is we created partials on our store side that coincided with every custom type that we had created, so that when they come back, we again control sort of how that's rendered, keeping us really happy with what the marketers want to put in, and also the safety that we feel by kind of controlling what our site is rendering. So let's look at that partial. So that's what it looks like here. So we're going to loop through all of the documents, all of the different that group that we were looking at, and we're going to try and get the variant. And we have a default URL and default image, just in case they don't have one present. And then we just render just like a thumbnail or something, like just the carousel, right? And it ends up looking like this. This is like a vanilla site, and I added it down there. And those just in Prismic look just like SKUs. They just put in SKUs, and that was it. So once we'd had all that together, we'd created all of our components, and we'd set everything up. You just rinse and repeat, right? Like, you've set it all up, and then we had to look at the big picture, right? Like, what we really wanted to do was add those things to the site all over, which we can now do, right? You just change your controller methods a little bit and get those documents and render them how you want. But we really wanted to do the home page. And what we did was we created documents for various sections of the home page. So first we have this one up here, which is the top document. Then we have one on the left and one on the right. And that allows marketers to control certain sections of the site as they want. And you can see the components kind of that we had just talked about, right? Like, there's mini banners down here, there's a hero banner up here. This is that multi-item carousel that I talked about. Headers, we actually made a top 10 component as well. So the neat thing is that those components can live anywhere. So they can reuse this multi-item carousel on a taxon page without any effort. Like, it just happens. And they can turn it on and off as they want. And it's been awesome. And as developers, we don't have to do anything. We just, they change content, and we go to the website, and it's new. So let's talk about the results. We did all that, and that was just, it was great. First, we got faster render time with caching. So that might sound a little bit weird, like you're always making a request to Prismic. And that is true. We have to see if the site has been updated, like, have they deployed something new? Prismic, tell us about it, and we'll do that. But we use the cache key of the current ref for caching, so that we don't have to, if there's nothing new, just show them what we've already got in cache. Again, we've got server-side rendering to dodge those ad blockers, which was really neat. Once we really figured out Prismic and kind of the power that it was as an API-based CMS, we started to see other potentials for it, and we started to use it in app. So like in our mobile apps, it now pulls in advertising from Prismic. So marketers only have one place to go to update not only the homepage, but all of the mobile app advertising happens right there too. They get previewing changes, like I said, with cookies, and I'll show that in just a second, as well as scheduled releases. They saw really good success with the scheduled releases last Christmas, during like a 12 Days of Christmas sale, right? They could set up all of their designs and images and everything weeks in advance, and set each of them to release at midnight on each day. And they just didn't have to do anything come fourth quarter, because it was already set up and they were done. And they just watched it go. So that was, yes, that was much happier. Everybody's really happy with that at this point. So now we're going to do the safest thing ever, which is a demo. And this is totally going to go well, I promise. Hopefully, maybe it won't. Hold on. I'm going to mirror this so that I can control it a little bit better. Here we go. Okay, so here's this one that I was showing before, right? This is my local app that I hope is still running. Good. And here's what it looks like in Prismic. So all it is I've labeled it, Prismic carousel, or product carousel. And I've just given this SKU on each of them. But let's say that I wanted to edit it. You just click on it, and it goes into edit mode. And we can click here and pick an image, like this panda. And we can save it. And whoops, not preview here, I'll preview on the other one. And you publish. And you can see right now I have this drop down for publish. I can publish it now. I can do a specific date and time, or I can do during a release. And a release is just a group of documents that's going to be all released at the exact same time. So for this one, you can also do an experiment variation. They do support A/B testing. So that's what you would do here. You'd set up your experiment of like the documents that you want to show in your kind of A/B test, and you can get some results with that. So we're just going to publish it right now. And if we go back to our site and we refresh, I'm running locally. There we go. There's the panda. See, that was all that happened. Like we didn't have to do a deploy. We didn't have to change anything. This would have just been, our normal production app going. And speaking of production apps, I've been given permission to really change our production app. So here, I know. So here we go. Here we go. Now I'm not going to do a huge change. What we're going to do, it's going to be small, but you guys will see it. So we're going to flip these two right here, right? Okay. Here we go. So again, we edit it, right? So now I'm actually on my own. When it goes yellow, it means you're in edit mode. And other users can see that you kind of have like your own branch of this. And they can see that you're making edits on this document. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this little thing. And we're going to drag it right there. Right? Is that in a different order? Looking at Rob? There we go. Good. OK, so we'll save it. And we can do previewing here, because we do have previewing set up. I didn't have previewing set up for my little tiny store, but we're going to preview it on production. Fingers crossed, everybody. Here we go. If the Wi-Fi works. There we go. OK. Oh, CSS is coming in weird. Is that different? Yeah. Oh, we did it. Look at that. So this is previewing, and you can see in the bottom right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That's good. So you can see in the bottom right, Prismic puts a little thing up to say, look, this is not live. Like, you're previewing this. And then all we need to do, once we're like, yeah, this is really good, again, we can just publish it right now. And it's published. And to really do it right, so that there's no like caching or anything crazy, we'll do a incognito window to really do this right. And hopefully, it's right there. Look at that. Yeah, there you go. So that's it. So yeah, that's just like a quick demo about Prismic. We have been extremely happy with it. And that's it. That's all I've got. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
So every page load, you're asking Prismic if there's a new release.
You can. So in the example, oh, sorry. The question was every page load, are we asking Prismic if there's a release? Yes and no. So on the example that I showed, like on the products page, the product show was the only page we were checking Prismic, right? That was the only place we were saying, hey, Prismic, tell me about this document, right? Because that's the only place we were initializing the API with that include helper. So you can limit it. I've been thinking about it, and it might make more sense to do it like as a background task occasionally. Since we're breaking the cache anyway with a new ref, then it doesn't really matter if this user started the request and sees old data, and then a new one sees the new data. That's fine. That's not a big deal. That's an improvement we can make. Yeah, we currently don't. Currently, it's set up just like this, where if you hit it, it's gonna check it, which does add load time. We actually did see some. If Prismic is down, that can be a real issue. And what we did was, with that caching, if Prismic is down, just use the old ref that we already had. That's how we did it. So. Yes?
In that case, if Prismic is down and you reboot your app,
Right.
how
Yeah.
does it go?
So the question was, if Prismic's down and we reboot the cache, or we reboot the app, and there's no cache to fall back on, yeah, we're in trouble. So what happens is currently, right? So yeah, we just don't have anything right now, and the pages they won't load, right? They will fail, and it's not great. So we're always improving this. And to speak to that, I do have a gem that I kind of created called Solidus Prismic. And so if you want to try this out, this is just a gem that you can put into your Solidus app, and you can. It just has that Prismic helper that you saw. I didn't want to tie into anyone's. I didn't want to class eval or prepend anybody's stuff. So I wanted you to kind of have a lot of the control. There is an example down here that you guys can follow to kind of get you an idea of how to use this. But you're right, there's plenty of places to make improvements. And this has actually a lot of our production code, the way that it's set up for us. So please feel free to open an issue, or pull requests are welcome. This is obviously super new, so we'd love that. Yeah?
How long does it take for you to know that Prismic is down?
Oh, the question was, how long does it take to load Prismic is down? It's using, I think it's using Faraday. I think the Prismic IO Ruby gem is using Faraday, and I don't think it has a good timeout, and so it takes a while. Too long, in my opinion. So it's not great. It's not great. Yes?
Do you know if there's any open source versions of API CMS?
Sorry, I can't.
Do you know if there's any open source versions of the API CMS?
That's a good question. The question was, are there any open source API-based CMSs? And I actually don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. So if anybody does. Yeah?
I don't know if this was a problem for you guys, but I know when we have clients that don't have a structured way to put their content in,
Right.
we'll get and could you also change the design of this at the same time?
Right.
I was wondering if this has helped slow those down in any way, or if you just get asked to make more components.
Okay, so the question was, once you've got this set up, are there a lot of requests to sort of make changes stylistically, or to add more components, or kind of whatever, to iterate on it, right? And no, it actually has slowed it down. We used those same components that we set up initially, all over the site. We really haven't done anything to them. And the good thing is that we just, you just change those partials most of the time, and all of a sudden they all look better, right? Or we add new fields that aren't used, and so the old stuff still works, but now we can leverage new things in the partials. So they really just kind of iterate on the components themselves. Does that make sense? Yeah, we back there?
Yeah, I want to answer the question about API-based CMS.
Yeah.
Yes, it's called CMS.
It's called what?
Alchemy.
Alchemy. Oh yeah, Alchemy. Yeah, right. I've heard of that. I've looked into it. Cool. All right, Alchemy CMS. That's your open source one. Great. Cool. Thank you. Yes.
How many components does it take to run your store?
Oh man, a lot. So I talked more about components and custom types because, and I'm going to admit something here, but we actually don't use components and custom types like we should. We initially started with what are called slices. And we have a lot of those slices. You can see that this is a whole list of stuff that we've got. Channels and taxon pages and home pages and merchandising, we have a lot of them. And see, these are repeatable. A lot of these are new. We used to use slices for a lot of this. This merchandising component actually was our first iteration and housed all of those components in that custom type. And that wasn't great. So now we have a custom type for each component, and it works. It's more modular. You can spread it out a little bit better. So we're happy about that. Yeah?
You ever run into a situation where the content has changed and that makes your specs fail and it's not exactly clear what changed?
Okay, so the question was, if content changes, has that ever broken our specs? No, it hasn't. We usually try to make our tests not rely on that because we don't test for that because we assume that they're going to be changing it so much that we don't really test. We test to make sure that we can communicate with Prismic, make sure that things on our end work, and we're just going to assume the rest of it works, which is a little bit risky. But you're right, like that there's a risk for sure. Yeah, Clark.
This supports A/B testing. What measures conversions?
It can be funneled into Google Analytics. Yeah, so you can put that output in there. A lot of times people use that UID as like a tracking code, or you can put in a field that's like key text, and we usually put that as like a ref on the end so that when people click on stuff, we know kind of the back and forth. But Prismic, at least, does do in their experiment send stuff to Google Analytics for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Can the marketers compose these components into larger blocks, you know, on the Prismic side, or does the layout really all still be driven? Is it all driven by the partials?
So the question was, can the marketers sort of build these components and expand them and create new ones, right?
Or maybe like kind of more a la carte, say like, I want to make a new page.
Oh, right.
And I want these components on it.
Okay,
With
so
this content.
you're right. So the question was, can we make a new page? Can marketers make a new page and pull in their own components? Yes and no. At the end of the day, it's going to come back to the site itself. So we do need to have kind of a structure ready on our end. And like I said, we do loop through the components. So if they're reusing components that already exist and tagging them as such, we will know how to render them on our end. But most of the time, it is a back and forth effort. The developers usually create it for both sides, just so we know what to expect as the data comes back, and we can get the partial ready to do that. Yeah?
You ever considered using markup to avoid having to write partials?
That's a good question. The question was, have we ever considered using markup to avoid partials? No, we haven't, but that is a good idea. Prismic does support, tons of different styles of writing stuff. They just you can drop in text, you can drop in HTML. Obviously, for reasons before, we don't want them to drop in HTML and then have us do HTML safe. That scares us a little bit, so we don't do that. But we could. Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that. Anybody else? Great. Thank you so much.